the Japanese who had expected to overrun all of China within a few months, with little opposition from the disunited and unprepared Chinese, found themselves involved in a long and bitter war. After 4 years of hard fighting and severe losses, Japan had succeeded in occupying North China and a fringe of land along the coast. But in this territory, the soldiers of the rising sun had won most of the objectives for which Japan had launched its invasion. As the Japanese advanced, they began immediately to convert the conquered territory to their own needs. To keep their own men free for fighting, they made the fullest use of slave labor, organizing the Chinese into gangs under relentless overseers. The conquered Chinese were not docile. They had to be guarded constantly, but rebellious coolies who were reluctant to work deliberately slowed down were given the alternative of working or starving. The Japanese believe in making an invasion pay for itself. Thus, day by day, the Japanese were building up their strategic stockpiles at home in preparation for the day when they would be ready to strike out for the immense riches of the South Pacific. Years ago, Japan's militarists had realized that the Philippines were the strategic key to this whole area. Also, they contained resources Japan needed in order to extend its conquests. In the islands were millions of board feet of hardwood, enough first-rate lumber for all Japan's needs. In the making of hemp, a useful war material, Japanese colonists in Naval had managed to gain a strong monopoly. But what Japan most desired was chromite, produced in the Philippines at the rate of 130,000 tons a year. In British Malaya, Japan saw within its grasp a land rich in resources and poorly defended. Malaya rubber plantations produce more rubber than the Japanese could use, and in addition, they had great strategic value. For the United States and Britain had long relied on Malayan rubber to keep their economies functioning. From the tin mines of Malaya had come 37% of the world's tin production, 85,000 tons a year. To get exclusive command of this immense supply was a primary purpose of the Japanese. For generations, they had seen in Singapore a symbol of the hated white supremacy in the Far East. Goods from all parts of Asia went through Singapore. The British had spent millions of pounds on dry docks and fortifications to protect the trade and create a naval base that was impregnable by sea. But the Japanese planned to attack by land. To conquer the Netherlands East Indies, they were prepared to pay a heavy price, for its resources included much that Japan needed. In Java and Sumatra were some of the world's most productive oil fields. "85% of the world's cinchona bark from which quinine is made comes from those islands. Since quinine is the preventive for malaria, which is capable of destroying whole armies, its military importance to Japan was obvious. Scarcely less important to Japan were the Dutch naval bases, which would be useful to them in further aggression to the southeast, into Australia. To the Japanese, Australia has always meant room to live in, and it has long been eyed with malicious envy by Japanese jingoists. In Australia, just beyond their reach, were many of the strategic minerals of warfare, wealth which could make Japan one of the world's most powerful nations. Coal and iron were piled up in mountains, easy to reach and easy to mine.